Welcome to the Pure Victory Podcast, full of hot tips to help you win at sex, conquer porn, and find purpose in staying free forever. Here are your hosts, Matt Cline and Braden Hafner.
Hey, welcome back to the Pure Victory Podcast. Matt here, Braden here, and we got a guest here, and I'm a little jealous of this guest. Braden, have you ever got a hole-in-one?
No, that's I don't know if I ever will either. Maybe.
I know. Well, I had a buddy, my first round of golf this year, he asked me, he's like, you want to go play? He gave me two options for which courses, and one was a par 3 course. I'm like, man, 18 par 3s, let's go get a hole-in-one. And didn't happen. And then Andy Ponstein in Hudsonville in the States, he texts me, sends me this video of him plucking this ball out of the hole. How'd that feel, Andy?
It was pretty good. It's been a long time coming, so it was a fun time. I think I joked with you, Matt, that that particular hole, that particular course, I grew up playing, and it's a local country club, and we were members. And I've played thousands of rounds, and the closest I've ever come to a hole-in-one was on that particular par 3. It's a 150-yard par 3. But I was about 10 years old because I remember I hit a 5-wood from the ladies' tee, and it rolled all the way across the green, rolled around the hole, and rolled out, and actually sat on the lip. And so I think it owed me one. So, like 30 years later, 35 years later, it gave me one. So, yeah, it was fun. Wow. It was a good time. My wife was there, my daughter, and my to-be son-in-law. So it was fun.
Wow. You joined elite company, I think, there, Andy. Is there a secret club now that you're part of? Is there where you have jackets and stuff?
Yeah, what happens after?
I've heard, because I hit a Titleist golf ball, and I've heard if you send in, they'll send you a badge and like a medal. I'm going to go for that, but I don't know of any jackets. The good part was it was our school outing. So and my kids are part of a Christian school here in Hudsonville. And so I didn't have to go and buy everybody a round of drinks or anything. It was just, we had a good time. The bad part was I did it on hole 13, and I got a $50 Under Armour gift card, which is great. But if I had done it on hole 3, I'd have gotten a Maserati. So not really the same thing.
Oh, man.
$50 for a Maserati.
Yeah.
Shoot,
let's make a deal, right? That's a bad deal.
Oh, man. Wow.
Well, let's keep playing another 37 years. Maybe you'll get another one and do it on the right hole.
You'll get your Maserati someday.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Well, Andy, why don't you share how you got connected? You've it's been awesome. You've been in one-on-one coaching and group coaching, but you can just share a little bit about how you got connected with Restored and what the reasons were for that.
Sure. I heard your story, Matt. I was actually listening to another podcast. I don't know if we plug other podcasts on here, but
yeah, go for it.
I was listening to the Unrelenting Pursuit podcast, and you were on it,
which I love. Everybody listen to Unrelenting Pursuit.
Yeah, they're fantastic. We've had the chance to really get to know them both, and Brad and Lisa, they're awesome. But so I was listening to your story on that, and I've been on this process, on this journey of healing from sexual sin and sexual deviancy for a while now, and it's such a battle. So always looking kind of for allies and looking for new weapons to fight. And when I listened, I heard your story, it really kind of struck me. My story's somewhat similar to you, at least in the same vein as what I heard you saying, and I thought, man, I bet he and I would connect in some of this because we have some similar background. So I went online and I think I sent you an email, and we ended up talking and going through some coaching and now in some group stuff, etc. But it's been fantastic, and it's led to a lot of freedom for sure.
Well, that's so amazing you reached out, Andy, because I think a lot of people, maybe they really want to reach out, but something's holding them back. It might be the shame, or maybe there's a little bit of embarrassment, or you just think, I don't need to reach out because maybe I can try something else. Maybe I'll figure this out. And so why did you reach out, Andy? What kind of drove you to do that? Because I think a lot of people get to that point, but they never move past it.
Because I couldn't win. I could sit and fight and try to beat this by myself. And that's hard for me because I'm a guy that is used to being successful. That's how my life would be based. And yet I couldn't beat this. No matter what I did, I had to reach out and I had to get some more tools and some more weapons and people around me that would hold me not only accountable. It's hard to hold somebody accountable across the country, but it was vital to me to surround myself with people that I knew cared and that I knew had maybe been down this road and I knew had experience in fighting it. And that's been a blessing to work with Restored in that capacity.
Well, it's been really cool because you have taken the approach of diving in and taking things seriously, which has been great in formal meetings, but also apart from that, taking advantage of just reaching out and talking to guys, whether it's in your group or coach or whatever. And so you have taken it seriously, and obviously the results are there. But why don't we go back and talk about what led you to it? Because there's like when you're involved in your sexual sin, what did that look like in terms of what were you doing and what was the impact of that?
Yeah, so I had alluded to the fact that being successful was very important to me. And I'd also alluded to the fact that Matt's story really resonated with me. And I'll go back to that. I grew up in a Christian household. I went to a Christian school. I went to a Christian college. We did a lot of things that would check the boxes to say, you're on the right track. Unfortunately, sometimes I believe that's what it was for me. It was checking a box. I married my high school sweetheart. We are still married. I'm not really sure why. I mean, why she's kept me around, but she has, and she's still here, and I'm thankful every day to God for that. But my connection with Matt, I know Matt had worked at hockey at a significant level. For me, it was racing. So I began racing snowmobiles when I was 12, and then by the time I was 15 years old, I was into full-fledged stock cars, and continued to succeed in that. And like any other sport, continued to move up levels until ultimately I was in the NASCAR, what was the Busch series originally, and then the Nationwide series, and I ran what was the Craftsman Truck Series. I believe it's the Camping World Truck Series now. I'm not 100% sure. And so from 2003 till 2011, quite literally made my living racing in NASCAR. Whether it was racing on the track or testing or being a part of teams, it was what I did. And while I achieved a level of success, I never, what you say, truly made it, right? So you get so far and whatever circumstances happen, right down to the fact that, you're not good enough. There comes a level at which you are, and a lot of factors play into that, but my career stalled out. That was how I defined myself. That was who I saw myself as. And it threw me for a complete tailspin. Throughout this time, from my childhood, I was a pornography addict. I was first exposed to pornography at, I'm going to say 9 or 10 years old. Which was a very vulnerable time in my life already from some other stuff that went on. And I had continued down that road, in and out, kind of on the outside of it sometimes, but other times fully involved in whatever I could find. And it continued. Now I have this crisis in my life. I'm losing the thing that I used to define myself. I'm losing what I considered myself to be. So as that's happening, I'm free falling into this world of pornography, and I'm angry, and I'm kind of rebelling, and it actually led me into a full-fledged affair that I had on my wife, and ended up being found out. We did some counseling, we did some work. She did a lot of work to really rehab through that process. And I did some of this stuff. I did some of the reach out to some mentors and some Christ-centered men that I knew, and that went well for a while. And then after that period of time, I would say after 6-8 months of really pursuing that, maybe I thought I was healed, or I don't really know what I thought, but I stayed, I would say, pure for a while. I don't honestly know how long.
I think a lot of guys, when there's a period of behavior or freedom from the behavior, we think we're healed. I went through that for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Like, no,
I don't think I made it 2.5 years, but yeah.
Right. Right. I was more deceived than you were, apparently.
You worked harder at the beginning.
Yeah.
And through self-pity, my wife was still hurting, right? I will say, so my wife is a great woman. And what she did when the first thing happened, she turned her attention to the family, like a mother hen. She grabbed her, her little chicks under her wings. She tucked everything in, and it was full on battle. And I think that went on for a couple of years, where she made sure that their lives and their existence was whole, and that they were protected. And in that, I kind of felt like, oh, well, she's good. We've moved on from this. We're going along well. After a couple of years, then I think it really hit her. Like, she started to deal with herself, and I wasn't ready for that. I was like, what the heck? We've already been through this. And I'm certainly not blaming her for what I can see the great way that went, but I was not prepared, and I was not able to really do that. I took it very personally, which I mean, I guess is true, but really stupid. And so I began to fall backwards again, and I walked right back into where I had been before, and it all culminated again with another affair. And this was again found out, and then we restarted everything again. We restarted all of the purity and freedom and everything that we've done, and it's just come, the last 8-10 months where it's really been walking in that freedom daily, and the relief and the joy that comes from that is so real.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. A bit of your story there. And I think it's fitting, you being a NASCAR driver, and this next question I have for you, but kind of that mentality when you're in the midst of a battle with porn. We have two separate lives, and one of our lives is the one where we put our mask on and we craft a well-fashioned kind of facade so that our inner life isn't seen. We try to outrace that inner life. We try to look a certain way on the outside, at the behest of our inner life, where we're really suffering. But on the outside, maybe we look like we're doing okay. Maybe we're highly successful. And then eventually that inner life, it comes spilling out and everything comes crashing down. So maybe describe that, because it sounds like, you're very successful at what you did. And often when that happens, there's a lot of pain that we're not allowing to be dealt with because we think we can, well, like I said, outperform it. And so how was that process for you? Because eventually we have to come to a place where we need help. We got to put down that mask. We got to invite God into it, and we got to be real with what's going on. So what was that like for you? Because I'm sure that was very hard to do.
It was. So part of who I am, actually fueled into a lot of that. I have had an ability, and I don't know if I won't say it's a positive ability, but it's real, that I have an ability to compartmentalize. And it was actually brought to me by another counselor when he had read a quote that I had actually been quoted in saying in a interview, where during racing, we were racing with my teammate for the lead and for the eventual win in this race. And the interviewer asked me, would you have wrecked him? Would you have caused him to crash to win the race? And my response to the interviewer was, I would crash my mother to win the race. That's not even a question. And as arrogant and pompous as that sounds, it's just totally a figment of that compartmentalization. I could put that all in a box. And in a way, I think you had to. You can't. It'd be hard to run into a corner with 40 of your closest friends at 200 miles an hour, 3 inches apart, knowing that any mistake could literally cost someone their life if you can't put that in a box and just accept all realities. That's how I lived my life. So I was excellent at portraying what I wanted to portray. I was a deacon in the church. I have this family. Look, I have these daughters we talked about that are playing super high level soccer, and I have all this going on. I have a successful company. I'm a pilot. I have an airplane. I have a boat. I have all the toys anybody could want. But you know what I really have? I've got this other side of me that I don't let anybody see, that is a complete train wreck. It is a complete, it flies completely in the face of anything that God designed for me. And that causes a lot of chaos. And it certainly, when it starts to become known, it causes a lot of damage, and the fear of living with that every day is something that I carried for years. Probably part of the joy now, in fact, a large part, is I don't have to carry that stuff anymore. I don't have to walk that road. I don't have to live 2 lives. But I think that we, as I say Americans, even though you guys are, from the northernmost state,
we're just part of you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
We're like church culture in our area is very much like I'd said earlier about checking a box. I'm here. I'm a deacon in the church. I got my wife and kids here. It's Sunday. Can we hurry up and wrap this up? NFL football starting here pretty quick. We got it going. I think that mentality leads to a lot of this. We have to show, we can't be vulnerable, and we can't actually show the cracks in our armor. And I was good at it. I was really good at
it. Yeah, I can so relate to it. I've said before on the podcast that when I was in hockey, I didn't think that I was arrogant. But when I came out of hockey, I was in a Christian circle. I was like, oh, I'm like the most arrogant person here. And this is actually, I've never told this. I don't know if I've told to anybody, but I'll just throw it out there to the world. It's one of the most embarrassing things I can remember I ever said. I remember I was with someone a couple of years after I was in junior, and I said to them, like, yeah, you know what? Like when people used to be in a room with me, like they would feel really like it was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. It's like the worst, like so arrogant. I'm embarrassed even saying it. But you just get built up in this, like, but the reality is that is true though. Like when you're even like small town junior hockey in Canada or your NASCAR, like that is true. They're all talking about you. They're all wanting your autograph. They're all like, it's just so unhealthy. Now it's like I go places and people know that I'm there, and I'm like, for me, like, who am I? And it's just so different. It's so relieving to not be like that anymore. And so I say all that to say I can relate to you, but I've also seen such a shift in you, even in the time that I've known you, because I've even brought a couple things up that you said early on, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember you saying that, or I remember saying that, because it's like you're so much more broken and probably humble now, right? And so it's just great.
That feeling, I think back to some of the things I've said And I didn't even, like, I wasn't trying to be arrogant. I wasn't trying to be that guy. I just was that guy. So it was a natural outflowing of who I was. And the worst part is, for me, when I think about it, that didn't stop when I left the autograph tent. That didn't stop when that was my life. And what a miserable existence. Yeah, it is humbling. And I know exactly what you feel. You're like, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I thought that even. It's
I
just
know.
like, it's crazy.
I know. I remember you telling this story, and maybe you could expand on it. You don't have to, but you were on a day off. You were watching other drivers that were high level drivers, right? And they were
Mm-hmm,
taking a turn. You couldn't believe how fast they were going.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And is it the next day you went and you were faster? Your time was
No,
faster.
we were actually, so we were at Texas Motor Speedway, and I was racing the the Xfinity race for anybody that's a NASCAR fan. So the Saturday race. And I was struggling with turns 1 and 2. So after our practice, and we had done what would be what we call a mock qualifying run. So we had done 2 laps, um, new tires, fully taped up, which means you put duct tape actually over the grill, and it keeps the air going over the car instead of through the radiator. And it makes a dramatic difference on the way the car drives and the speed. But of course, it causes the car to heat up, so you can only do it for like 2 laps. So you do that for qualifying. So we've done a full mock qualifying run, and I wasn't very happy. I thought the car was pretty good. I thought the driver wasn't that good. So I told the crew chief I was going to actually go. It's Friday, so the race is on Saturday. I told the crew chief, so after that cup practice, or the Sunday race, they were out practicing. I said, I'm going to go, and I'm actually going to sit in the stands over in turns 1, and I want to watch these guys go through the corner, because I'm not getting through there right. My entry points or my landmarks are not where they need to be. So I went up and sat there, and I grabbed my stopwatch, and the 2 guys out there were Matt Kenza and Kevin Harvick. And I was watching them go, and they went by me, and they literally took my breath away. It was like, holy cow, those guys are going so fast. So I grabbed my stopwatch and I started timing them, and they were, 3/4 of a second slower than we had just run, because they were in race trim and we were in what we call mock-up qualifying run. But it was pretty amazing when you sit back. So I can tell anybody that's listening that goes to NASCAR races or something, it is very fast, but it does not feel that fast in the car until you're upside down or backwards, or
Right.
start to hit something. Then it feels pretty fast.
Right. Yeah. So with that, like I remember someone a year and a half ago, full out addicted personality, or not personality, but like just lifestyle. They said to me, they're like, I don't think it's that extreme. And it's extreme to everybody around this person, they can see. And it's the same with what you're saying. You're watching other people, everyone can see the reality of it, but when you're in it, you don't really realize it. And so what has, I think this could help people, like what has been the process for you of opening your eyes to the destruction in your marriage that you caused, or the destruction in your family? Because when you were in the midst of it, everything was just hidden, and even you probably didn't even fully realize it.
Oh, for sure. Satan hides so much. I mean, that's what he is. He's a deceiver. So he loves to keep you on that track. And yeah, there were a lot of things that I think there are things that you fall for, things that you start to believe that simply aren't true. One is you start to believe, like when I was in the middle of it, oh, it's no big deal. Nobody's really getting hurt. Nobody's going to care. Even if this were found out, my wife were to divorce me, the kids will be fine. These are all lies that I bought into, and they are total. And because in that moment, it's hard to love yourself. It's really hard to put any value in yourself. So in your eyes, you really don't have any value to anyone else. At least I didn't. I shouldn't say we, you, me. I didn't feel like I had any value if I really boiled down to it. So I couldn't have value to anyone else. I don't have value to me. But that's not true, because I do have value, and you do have an immense amount. I can only imagine, even like right down to suicidal tendencies or thoughts. I think that's a trap we fall into. Like, I don't have any value anyway, and it's not true. You have value because God says you have value. You have value because you're told that you are a priceless creation. And not only that, you have value to those around you. My wife has proven beyond what I can even begin to say what it means in earthly terms to have unconditional love. If there are a lot of people that don't know our story, and they may think I'm great, and they may think that, they don't know, right? We don't know what's going on behind anybody's walls. But I can tell you that my life, I think a telltale sign to everybody that I've talked to about this and people that have been down the same road, is your life will tell it. I would schedule my days around my sexual activity. I'm self-employed, right? So it gives me a certain amount of freedom. Well, it would be pretty easy for me to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the strip club at 3:00 today. I can maneuver my schedule, and I'll be gone for an hour and nobody will even know it. I would challenge the guys that say, oh, I'm not really into it. I'm not really, it's not that big of a deal, or, it's not, is to say, do you do that? Well, I could, if I stay at the office here another hour, nobody will be here and I can watch porn, or my wife will go to bed at 10 and I can do this. I think it's a telltale sign when you're scheduling your day based around your addiction, based around your deviancy. It's not a fun place to be.
No, it's not. And it's a funny way that, God cares too much about us. We've said this, that he eventually will expose us. And when he does it, often we're in a situation where things are found out versus us disclosing. and that can be very painful to our loved ones, and very difficult. But God just loves us too much to let us wallow in that mire and that darkness. And I'm curious too, because I know that when you're talking about the enemy, Satan lies to us to keep us in that darkness and doesn't want us to expose that sin, because when the sin's in darkness, it grows, it festers, it grows, it gets worse. But when you get into the light, it loses its power. Sin loses its power in the light. And that's when we come out and we reveal things. God's kind. He leads us in a really amazing journey of doing this, even though it's hard. But through that, sin loses its power over us. And I'm just curious, was there a particular point for you when some of those lies that you're believing, all of a sudden you confront them and you realize, hey, this isn't real. This isn't true. This isn't from God. I need to address this. Was there a specific point, or maybe was it a process or journey? What do you remember about that?
When I started to really, I'll say, come out of the haze that creates, is I remember my wife saying, you look different, you're happier. And I remember feeling that, like I had a different load on my shoulders. A specific event is a little harder to pinpoint, but there have been what I'll say milestone events that have created positive momentum in that type of situation. One of which, and I know Matt knows this, was 6 months ago, I took a polygraph test and it was stressful. My wife was concerned. She was scared that I had fallen back, or I was beginning to pursue that life again. And so we went through the test, and the results were the truth, and they were positive. But that was an event that afterwards had very positive direction. A term that I struggled with and that I don't really like is forgiving myself. I did struggle to forgive myself, or at least accept God's forgiveness. When I think of forgiving myself, it brings me right to almost just arrogance and blasphemy. Like I can't forgive myself. I don't have that power. And at the same time, I don't have that power. I don't have the authority to hold myself captive. I'm given grace and I'm given forgiveness, and I have to accept that. But it's not my job to forgive myself. But I think I've struggled for a long time, or I did struggle for a really long time, accepting that forgiveness. A mentor of mine and I talked about this a lot, and we talk about it, calling it like the bloody club, right? You carry this club around your and you smack yourself on the head with it. I'm reminded of, if you've seen Harry Potter, there's a scene in one where there's an elf. I think his name is Dobby, and every time he thinks he does something wrong, he smacks his head against the wall, and he does all these things. And we were actually watching that. And I'm not endorsing Harry Potter. I'm just saying that was a realization to me. Like, that's what we do, right? We like to carry. We do it in secret. It's out there in the movie. This is, part of his character, but we do it to ourselves in secret. I can't accept this goodness that's given to me. I can't accept the forgiveness and the grace, because it is a form of arrogance to me, because it's like me saying, yeah, God, I know it's really easy for you to accept those guys and forgive those guys but maybe you don't really know everything I did. Maybe you don't really know how bad I've hurt people. And I think that's a complete lie too. It's like, what are you talking about? I was there the whole time. I mean, that's what I hear him saying. And to me, it's like, yeah, I get kind of sarcastic with myself, where I'm like, he's back there going, you are so dumb. What does it take for you to learn what I've done for you, and actually accept it? You say you accept it. You think you accept it. But that line, or that 12 inches between my brain and my heart sometimes is really long. The process of accepting God's grace, the process of understanding that he values me in a way that is beyond my comprehension, is something that has taken a while, but that's really taking hold.
That's actually really cool what you said, though, that however you said it, that when you're beating yourself up, you don't actually fully accept his forgiveness. Because if we fully walk in his grace, we're not beating ourselves up anymore.
Right.
Because he never beats us up. And so he doesn't want us to too. I
Yeah.
love it. And it sounds like instead of forgiving yourself, it draws you closer to Christ, draws you closer to his forgiveness, because you have to receive him, which ultimately that's what we want, is we have to know him in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no other choice. There is nothing else. I just said I can't forgive myself. So that has no validity whatsoever. If I say, Andy, you're off the hook, that means nothing. So I have to take that bloody club and put it at the foot of the cross and say, here it is. You are it, right? I acknowledge everything that's gone on, everything I've done, even things I can't remember. But I acknowledge this all to you, and you're it, and I fully lean on you, because I've got nothing left.
Wow. That's profound, Andy. And it's so great to hear the journey that you're on. And maybe just speak to this, because I know that there's a lot of people listening that don't know how they can pick up the pieces of their life, don't see hope around the corner, don't understand what you're talking about even. How do I receive that? How do I really allow God to speak versus the lies that I'm hearing all the time? So maybe just being that you're on that journey, you are on a healing journey. And so maybe just talk to people that, or say something in that regard, because there are people that maybe want to know that there is hope. And so just speak that out of your story.
Sure. I can only tell you what I think I needed to hear. And that is that you're not on an island. You're not alone. And sin and darkness fester the best when you're alone. So it's trying to keep you isolated. The enemy is trying to keep you fearful. And people, for one, I've learned, and this is a process, and this is actually a little scary for me doing this. People can be cruel, but they also can be extremely understanding, because in the end, we're all fighting our own battles. But the only real way that you're going to walk out of this is to bring it to the light and to get around some people that will draw you closer to Christ and work with you through that forgiving process. And it is the most freeing thing you'll ever do. But it takes guts, because it's hard. It's really hard to bend your knee. It's really hard to surrender, because you probably don't want to. There's a flesh side. My flesh side had to come to a point where I could really understand. Do you know why I do this? Because it makes me feel better. Because in the end, my flesh side likes this. But I had to really figure out that it didn't. But it definitely fed. Well, the flesh side likes it, but it wars with the spirit. And the spiritual side is so much more uplifting than the flesh side can ever be.
It's awesome. It is so uplifting. And part of that, if we could just wrap up with this, is I know that you just did a second polygraph test.
I did.
And I just want you to share the difference between that one and the first one, because the first one, you still were confident you'd pass, but you'd never done it before. Second
Correct.
one, you're like, yeah, this is fine. I know I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
Speak to the difference in having that freedom in your soul versus being unsure if you're going to get found out.
Well, so the freedom of my soul was great because I had no issues. My fears, I'll bring this back to racing. I know we went to a couple places, and I remember talking to drivers that I'd never been to before, and they would tell me you could flat foot the race car here, which meant basically you could put it on the floor and drive it all the way around, never have to lift off the gas like you would maybe in a local go-kart arena, right? Well, that's a little terrifying at 200 miles an hour. It doesn't always add up. Like, I can go into this corner as fast as I'm going down this straightaway, right? So you have to put a lot of faith in this machine. That did everybody tighten the bolts right? Has the steel been was it sonic tested correctly? Is everything good? Is there a flaw? Because if there's a flaw, it's going to find it, and that's going to hurt. So for me, their stress was a lot of putting faith in a machine, putting faith in something that would have so much power. But it is pretty amazing how things work. I don't need to get into that, but it is pretty amazing. But yes, so the second time I had gained some faith in the machine, and I knew that I was pure. I knew that there was no fear in me of anything that could be asked based on, my past or what I was involved in. So yeah, it was that part of freedom was fantastic, and it built a lot of anxiety in my life, and I can understand that because I'm a fantastic, maybe even pathological liar if need be. Or I was. And so I can understand her fears. And so it was the least I felt I could do.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, to do a polygraph, and based on kind of the past that you've been on and where you are now, and that's where you're able to just feel that freedom because you're fully open and honest with where you are in life and what God's done. And that's incredible. And it's a great point to kind of end on that. We all can get there in the sense of how God leads us, directs us, and to the point where we are fully open. And that's a freeing feeling. That's an amazing feeling, a lot of joy in that. And God wants to lead us there. And so thank you, Andy, so much for sharing your story, opening up to us here and everybody listening, and just being willing to pass this on to others, because story is so vital, and it helped me, helped Matt, hearing other people's stories. So thank you, Andy, for doing this.
You guys, thanks for letting me be on here. And yeah, anything I can do to help someone would be awesome. So if this story reaches one person and helps them on their journey, then it's all worth it.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more, please visit purevictorypodcast.com to subscribe. This podcast was made possible by the generous donations of our subscribers. If you would like to help support the cause financially, once again, please visit purevictorypodcast.com.